The Assad regime in Syria, backed by Russia and Hezbollah, seems to be on the brink of collapse, as even al-Assad himself seems to have fled the country. Just what is happening and how is Russia responding to this humiliation? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so first off, I want to point out this puff piece here, right? This is just pure propaganda, but what we could definitely learn from some of this is actually it reveals something pretty troubling about the Assad regime, right? Now, there's an acknowledgement that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad made his first public statement following widespread speculation about his whereabouts and the stability of his regime. So there's speculation, of course. The rumor is that this guy has bailed on Syria. The president of Syria is rumored to have fled, according to at least this random blue check Twitter account, who says well-placed sources say Assad remains in Moscow while many of his family and close allies are also abroad between Russia and the UAE. So what would you do if there were false rumors that you had fled overseas? Well, what you would do, of course, is publicly acknowledge at least that you were not overseas, right? And this puff piece says that, Assad had a series of phone calls with regional leaders where he affirmed Syria's commitment to security and territorial integrity, to which this is one of those things where you should understand that nothing of substance is being said, while emphasizing continued support from international allies, right? And again, notice how nothing in here contains confirmation or even Assad himself asserting that he's not in Russia. This is the key piece of information that he would want to assert. And if it were true that he was in Syria, he would at least say that. I'm in an undisclosed location in Syria. Why is that so important? Well, because it's pretty hard to run a country when you're not around. And so if you're going to get cooed, telling people, it's going to happen when you are in another time zone entirely, right? If your only connection to somebody is a phone call, there's a pretty good chance that they are just going to end up taking over your country. And that's sort of the rumor, one of the rumors that's been swirling is that there's a pretty good chance that actually there is going to be or has been a coup against Assad. Because again, the fact that the Iraqi prime minister is taking your phone calls where they agree that the security of both nations is intertwined, and Iraq's willingness to assist Syria in its battle against terroristic threats. Like, yeah, okay, that's something that all countries basically agree, like terrorism bad. So this kind of thing is again, this kind of puff piece is a sort of statement. You would see something different, right? If this was a pro-Assad puff piece, they would say he's in Syria, but they're not. They're saying he's calling people from an undisclosed location. Well, fairly obviously that undisclosed location is probably Russia. And so what does that mean? That means even Assad himself isn't confident that despite ostensibly controlling up to a third of or up to 70% of the country, or probably more like 60% now, that he's not going to be able to hold on for much longer. Now, we're going to break down the exact battlefield changes here in a second. But first, of course, it's still Black Friday, Cyber Monday, lads. That means you got to get your 20% off of Strike Gum. If you're tired of energy drinks, if you're tired, it's not 2006 anymore, guys. You don't need to get your Monster energy drinks, right? To stay caffeinated. They're overpriced. They're full of sugar, right? Get the zero sugar energy drink alternative. Each piece of Strike Gum contains all the caffeine of a Red Bull or an Amp Energy. Plus, it's 20% off for Black Friday. The link's in the description, or just go to strikegum.com. Okay, so let's talk about what exactly seems to be going down right now. Well, the jihadist rebels of THS, these guys, of course, are continue to barrel through Aleppo and other Syrian towns in the north and center. And there's rumors that this also is sparking other internal revolts in Syria as other people who aren't particular fans of the regime are finally smelling blood in the water, right? This has also created thousands of civilians fleeing Aleppo, and this is from an Italian newspaper. This is just classic Italian naivete. They said there's no danger to our fellow countrymen. These are Italians who are still in Syria. They say because the rebels have clearly said they're not going to touch or carry out hostile operations against civilian, foreigners, or even Christians. Guys. Yeah, they want to institute a caliphate, but listen, they pinky promised they weren't going to hurt anyone. And these guys have a track record of being scrupulous, honest actors. Look at the Taliban, who swore women's rights would be protected. Well, the women's rights under, Sharia law were protected, which is the right to exactly one kind of outfit, the right to not have to do homework, the right to get sold into marriage at the ripe old age of like 9. So, the Taliban, like all these other terrorist organizations, could say anything they want and do the exact opposite. Right? Now, here's the map of Syria, and I thought this was really interesting because you can see that right here, this little corner is where the rebel stronghold had been up until this point. So you can see that they've made some significant headway, pushing down towards the city of Hama, coming actually up to the outskirts of Hama. And then you also have what I thought was pretty interesting is that they've pushed the government out and are now bordering actually on Kurdish territory. And the Kurds themselves have pushed through, again, what they call Northern Syria, no man's land, or DMZ. So the Kurds themselves are also kind of making some advances. In fact, they appear to be trying to maybe link up with some of their forces here without necessarily drawing the ire, I suspect, of the Turkish, I'm trying to think of the nice way of putting this, Turkey's ISIS-affiliated sort of border security operation, which is primarily meant to punish the Kurds, right? And so you have these kind of actions, we'll say, but you can see here that what's interesting and perhaps troubling is one, that in Damascus, right, you can see that in some areas, there's actually reportedly residents from some cities are expelling Assad forces out of police stations, out of other places in the countryside. You can see Syrian opposition storming controlled towns, district centers, seizing weapons, right? So you're seeing people who are really tired of the Assad regime having sort of another crack at open rebellion. And so, but again, the biggest takeaway here is just all these towns that have fallen to the rebels, right? Look at this. Just a few hours ago, like 12 to 18 hours ago, Aleppo itself was contested. And now you see just huge swaths of land are completely under control of the rebels, right? Of these jihadists. And so again, this is like the opposite. You know how your mom is always like, I just hope both sides have fun. I hope both sides in this conflict have a terrible time. I'm glad to see Russia and Hezbollah humiliated. And I'm also rooting for terrible things to happen to these rebels. In fact, the only people who I hope decent stuff happens to are the Kurds, who, for ideological reasons, don't commit genocide. They just have this thing where they're like, man, human beings should be respected regardless of their choices, as long as their choices aren't to kill everyone. And so, if there's one person who I hope emerges from this as strong as ever, I hope it's Iraqi Kurdistan and Syrian Kurdistan. You never know. Maybe after all this effort, we can finally see some restructuring of these absolutely half-baked borders that were drawn, again, in 1910 by a bunch of British guys who were almost undoubtedly sloshed out of their mind on scotch. So, right, you never know. We can hope for the best. But again, it couldn't have happened to a worse group of people. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to folks like Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, Guys, Martin, Eugene, Cuesta, Chris Gorses, Rance Cars, L90, Petra Tororu, all of our Lieutenant tier members. I could not do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.